All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to scarcity is this idea that if countries trade with each other, they'll be able to alleviate some of the pressure from scarcity, which will show to be true. The reason why this is the case is because economies like what I've got here, little country and big nation, I've got a couple of PPFs for them. What they're going to be able to do is trade and lower essentially the cost of production, of acquiring the good that they're not good at producing, right? That they're not relatively better at producing. So, with that in mind, right, what we're going to do is we're going to think about this in three steps. One, we're going to identify which country has what's called the comparative advantage in the production of X or Y. We're going to do that by calculating and comparing opportunity costs in both of these economies. The second thing we're going to do then is identify terms of trade that makes both economies better off, because an economy is only going to want to trade with another economy if they can acquire the good at a lower cost by trading. So let's start here with number one, right? We're going to identify this notion of comparative advantage, and we're going to do that by calculating opportunity cost. So let's start with big nation. We will calculate the opportunity cost of X in big nation, right? We can get that by taking the maximum quantity of Y and dividing that by the maximum quantity of X. So let's see, maximum quantity of Y is 60, maximum quantity of X is 30, so we're looking at 2Y per X is the opportunity cost of getting a unit of X in big nation. Similarly, opportunity cost of X in little country is just going to be 1Y. Every time that they want to produce an X, they have to give up a Y in little country. So now that we've identified opportunity costs, we can identify who has a comparative advantage in X and Y production. And notice here, even though little country is smaller, little country gives up fewer Y every time they want an X compared to big nation. So little country has the comparative advantage in X production. Okay? So there's step one. We've identified which economy is a lower cost producer of X. Little country is because their opportunity cost 1Y is less than the opportunity cost of getting a unit of X in big nation, which is 2Y. So now we're going to take that information and we're going to think about what these economies might do when they start to trade with each other. So little country might approach big nation with a trade deal, right? Little country says, we're really good at producing X, you're really good at producing Y, let's trade and we can make each other better off. Little country wants to obtain more Y for each X they give up compared to when they operate by themselves. Right? So there's little country's problem that it has to solve here. It's going to be trading X over to big nation. So you can imagine here, here's little country, here's big nation. X is going to be leaving little country. Big nation's going to be trading some Y over there to little country. So we've got to figure out the cost of this. And there's little country's goals, right? Little country wants to obtain more Y for each X they give to big nation compared to when they operate by themselves. So we want to take that objective that little country has, and think about that in terms of establishing terms of trade. So little country is going to want more than 1y per x, right? They're going to want to be existing out here on the continuum. Now similarly, big nation is going to be receiving x from little country, and it wants to give up fewer y every time that it gets one of these x's compared to when it operates by itself. So what it's going to do is say, well, fine, we'll trade with you, but the maximum quantity of y we're going to give you is 2y for each x that you deliver to us. So little country wants more than 1y for each x. Big nation's going to want to give less than 2y for each x. Right? So its terms of trade are going to lie in this continuum. So anywhere in between, right, anywhere in between 1y per x and 2y per x is going to give us a terms of trade that are going to make these economies better off. So I'm just going to split the middle here and say that a possible terms of trade is going to be 3/2 y per x. That makes little country better off because they're getting more y for each x they give up than they would on their own. Big country is better off because it's cheaper for them to obtain x than it is on their own, right? Every time they want an x when they operate by themselves, they give up 2y. Now the cost is only 3/2 y. But anywhere inside of this continuum, right, as long as it's greater than 1y per x and less than 2y per x, meets the terms of the needs that both country has in order for the terms of trade to be viable.